In this video, we're going to talk about how to group, ungroup, and make holes and solid objects in Tinkercad. These are all very important tools when creating any kind of object and trying to be creative, or else you're going to feel very limited. So here I've dropped down a number of different objects, some of them solid and some of them are holes. Now if they're transparent here, they are actually holes, meaning that they will take out chunks of whatever object they're part of. So I have a cylinder here and I made it slightly bigger than the typical one that you pull over here. And I've made another cylinder that's a hole. And I've raised them up and down. And I'll show you why. So I'm going to bring that into this other object. Okay. Now, when creating holes in objects, what I like to do is I like to actually extend it higher than the object and below the object, because that way you know you're not going to have a tiny layer of anything print on top of your object. Okay. And then once you have your objects together and your hole where you want it, then you can highlight the whole thing or highlight each piece individually using the control button. So you're highlighting multiple things, or the shift button. And then you want to hit this group thing. And this is going to turn it into one object. Then you can click off that. And as you can see, you have that kind of hole now in your solid object where that hole feature is now gone. You can bring it back by clicking on it and clicking ungroup. Okay. Then you can edit and control it as you will. Okay. All right. I'm going to use the Control Z to have it back there. And over here, I have another hole that I've made, similar cylinder, but I've turned it horizontal and I want it to go through my object this way. Let's click on both those and group those. Sometimes after you hit the group, you have to wait a few seconds based on your internet connection and the speed of your computer. So let's take a look, and I got a hole right through that object, which is good, and that's what I wanted. Great. Next thing we're going to talk about is grouping and using the hole function to actually chop items in half. So if I want to put a handle on this box, I have a couple of ways I can do this. But the first and easiest is I'm just going to click this donut thing, move it down to this object. Okay. Change my perspective because I don't know how tall it is. I want it a little higher. Okay. A little over. A little too far, and then I can print it off like that. So before I do that, I can select it and hit group, and it'll turn it into one single item. Okay. And it shows that by them being the same color. Okay. I'm going to ungroup that for a second. And I'm going to take that blue donut out of it. Now, say you don't actually want the whole thing to be in it because you don't have a solid structure in it, or it'll stick out the back end of it. So what you're going to do is I like to use this box feature as my cutting tool. And I just make it kind of a general shape, and then I can move it right over top. Now I'm going to select both these. I'm going to group them again. And that's going to chop half of that off. And now, as you can see, I only have half of that, and that's a really nice solid handle. And when you're putting objects together like this, I always make sure that I go in to the object a little more. Because if you're not quite in the object, you turn this sideways, you can get an obvious gap, which will totally destroy your 3D printing and make it not very nice. So I always make sure that it is either right flush or in my object a little bit. Okay. So those are some tips on how to cut, how to group, and how to ungroup. Remember, your Control Z is your undo, your Control Y is your redo. If you get used to these tools, it'll make this Tinkercad really a lot more fun.